Sean Jones, the president of the WPSL, the Women's Premier Soccer League, and one of the partners and operators of Oklahoma City FC, one of the teams in the WPSL. And this is the Moss Futbol Podcast.
Yo, welcome back to the Moss Futbol Podcast, the #1 soccer podcast here in Oklahoma City. I am your host, Ricardo Ulloa, and I am here in the offices, the home of the WPSL, here to record with a really special guest. So let's jump right in. With me today, I have the president of the WPSL for the past 5 years, Mr. Sean Jones. How are you today, sir?
Very good.
First, very happy to have you here. I appreciate you for giving me a bit of your time. I know that you're a busy guy, and now that the World Cup's here, our time has gotten a little bit more valuable.
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely.
For the people that don't know you, could you please introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about yourself, please?
So my name is Sean Jones. Wasn't born and raised here. I was born in Ohio. Moved to Oklahoma when I was in the 7th grade, and have been here ever since. So I do consider myself to be an Okie. Nice. 58 years old. I've been around the game since its inception in Oklahoma, or in the Oklahoma City area. I was one of the first 106 kids or whatever it was that started playing soccer in Edmond when I was in 7th grade. Just been involved, as a player, referee, administrator, coach, parent, league administrator now, and so I've just been around it for a long time.
Nice. Well, I also, like I mentioned before, it's very nice to meet you. I know that Javier and Jose have met you before, but I had always heard great things about you from them, as well as from the Roberts.
Don't believe everything you
hear.
No.
No. Good. Well, let's start off with the league and how that's going for you. You've had it for 5 years. I find that to be super interesting as an endeavor. Why did you decide to take that?
So super interesting. I mean, one of the guests you've had, 6 weeks ago was Jimmy Hampton. Mm-hmm. And, we were talking a little bit earlier about how Jimmy Hampton has been such an influence for soccer in this part of the country. But I have 4 daughters. All 4 of them at one point or the other have played for Coach Hampton. My oldest one was a 93, and he had, if you remember, those incredible 90 and 91 groups. Mm-hmm. And so he was also, actively involved with the 93s. They played out of Edmond at the time, ESC, and before they became, OEFC and everything, they were just the ESC. I'm sorry. And my daughter was getting to be the oldest one. Alyssa was, I think, between 9th and 10th grade, and there were a couple players in her team that Coach Hampton invited out to train with the WPSL team, which at the time was called the Oklahoma City Alliance, and he basically formed that team for his 90 and 91s. He wanted to do something for them during the summer where they could stay active, continue to play. So the parent group got together and they investigated the WPSL. They got, I think at that time there might have been 50 teams coast to coast. Wow. So they got a team here in Oklahoma City, operated it, and he called me and said, "Hey, your daughter's training with us. Why don't you come out and watch a game? Watch some games." So we were coming out watching, couldn't believe how great the level was. I mean, just how incredible the players were, and the players they were bringing in. I would sit and ask, I say, "Well, who's that kid?" And he goes, "Oh, she's on the French national team. She plays for North Carolina," whatever. And it was this, like, what are these players? It's such a great level. And there were 27 people watching, and it was just, and it's like, wow, this is crazy that more people don't follow this and don't get involved. So after a year or so of my daughter playing, maybe it was her sophomore year or training with him, she didn't play much I think it was between her sophomore, junior year, Coach Hampton said, "What would you think about," because he knew I was very involved in soccer, taking over, running this enterprise, still letting me coach. He said, "My parent group is just a bunch of volunteers that just pitch in money and see if you guys can make something of it," because we had the discussion about we need to get fans out here. We need to get people involved. So I had a couple partners, Brad Lund and Debray Ayala, who I'd done some other things with, and were both very involved in minor league sports. Both soccer players, played with both of them, indoor and outdoor. And so, I talked to them about it, and they came out and watched the game, and we're like, wow, yeah, we think we can do something. So Jimmy basically gave the team to us, and said, "You guys own it, operate it, I'll coach." And so we decided to get a men's side as well. At that time, we were in the old PDL, which is now the USL something. One of the levels of USL.
One of the triangles, yeah.
Yeah, and so we went on from there, and so that's how we got involved. That's how I got involved in the WPSL. So having four daughters, by the third season, I had the next one down, Lexi playing, and then the younger one, JC, was training with them and playing. And so as we got more and more involved in running the league, we saw a lot of the problems with the league, a lot of the great things about it, but also a lot of just the issues the league had. And so we as a group reached out to the owner, who at the time was Jerry Zanelli, and said, Jerry, how can we help? How can we try to bring the league to the 20th century, 21st century? Jerry was an older guy. I mean, it started the league in 98. He was probably my age now when he started the league. And so he literally didn't know how email worked. Ran it out of his garage with a couple, young ladies that helped him. And so, it was always interesting. Would turn on, he had a website. He was like, well, we've got a website. And you turn it on, and it was, April of the following year, and an article from May of the previous year was still on there, and those kind of things. So, we asked, how can we help get involved? And so we started trying to work with him and do some things. And then in 2015, we had a very good team that year. And we won our region in a game against a team in Tennessee, and the team that was supposed to host the national championship bailed out at the last minute. And so he said, can you guys do it? Can you host it? So we, in 1 week, basically put together the national championship, which ended up being at UCO in Edmond. And also at that time, there was a U21. They were trying to get a U21 league off the ground, and so they invited a bunch of teams in for a U21 championship as well. So we actually did it at UCO. Had a great turnout. We lost in the semifinals to the Chicago Red Stars at the time. But we had a great run. But we thought we did a really good job with it. And Jerry was here, and Jerry thought so as well, right? So he picked up the phone the following week and said, what would you guys think about taking this league over when I'm ready to go? And so we said, absolutely. You tell us what we can do. And so that was in 2015. And so by 17, we had an agreement in place. And we thought we were going to take it over in 2017. And he said, no, I want to do it one more year. And so we waited. Yep. What can we do to help? Then it was 2018. He was like, I think I want to do it. We said, Jerry, look, at some point we need to, if we're going to get involved, we need to get involved. So we took it over, and our first year running the league was in 2019. And then I believe it was in late 19, early 2020, Jerry passed away. So, I think he knew his time was coming to an end and wanted to pass it on to someone who, I guess, was as passionate as he was about the game and, the women's side of it. And so we took it over from there. And that's literally how we got involved in it. It was just kind of a, Jimmy Hampton story, getting us involved in the team. And then, through just reaching out to Jerry and working with him, we got involved in the league.
What an amazing story. The first thing that came to my mind when you were talking about it is, there goes Hampton bringing the Mas Futbol.
Absolutely. We were Hampton.
We were Hampton, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow, I can't believe that one got coined.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I also want to commend you for the work that you are intentionally bringing to the women's game, because I think that's something that is overlooked with the amount of potential that is out here. The WPSL provides those type of opportunities that I think are very vital. You said it sounds like just keeping them busy. But keeping them busy yields so many benefits for these players that are playing, because on top of having these older players that are out of college, you have a lot of younger talent.
Absolutely.
I now see high school players competing with players that are playing in Division I college soccer. And that wide range just yields so much fruit, because those older players might want to give back to the youngers. The younger ones are just sponges. So I want to give you a round of applause.
Well, thank you. Yeah. It's to be honest with you, that I saw it with my daughters, right? I saw how much they improved being in high school, playing against these amazing college players. And I can remember, playing at MACU, my youngest, not third youngest, JC, we're playing in a game against FC Dallas, and their left back played at Notre Dame, was an All-American, played professionally for a couple of years, and here's my daughter still in high school, getting to play against that player, right, and getting to see them perform. And it's this trickle down, right? It's the younger players get out, they get an ability to train at that level. It opens their eyes to what's possible and how good they are, and that look, yeah, it's a different game and it's faster and the girls are really good, but I'm not that far off. If I work hard, I can get there, and then you start seeing them playing against players that have played in the World Cup that are playing in our league, or players that play for their national team that have been in our, and they play against one of those and are like, wow, that girl played, represented, Colombia, or that girl represented, Ecuador, or, and they start seeing that, what the possibilities are, how close they are, and just, more hard work can get them there. And so I think that development part is fantastic. And we actually have players playing for us now that were ball kids at our games 7, 8, 9 years ago. And they're literally starting for us now. So it's kind of a neat to see that growth and see those players, see that as a pathway and as an opportunity.
It's like a generational.
Absolutely.
Generational thing. When you took over it 5 years ago, what were some of the first things that you wanted to tackle? Like, there's always room for improvement, and from what I've been able to research and find and read, you seem very good at figuring out what can be improved upon.
So I will tell you, one of the things that we kind of preach is that we're never finished, right? It's always improvement. What can we do better? And we'll try things, and we've made mistakes. I mean, we'll be the first to admit there are things that we've tried that didn't work, or things that we tried that, in hindsight, maybe we should have realized that. But for us, it's just trying to constantly improve the league. And what's interesting is, our first and foremost thing at the top of our mind is it's creating opportunity for players, female, creating opportunities as coaches, creating opportunities as management, as interns, creating opportunity. And so that's kind of our guiding principles, right? How do we create more opportunity for players to kind of live this dream out? So even though it's an amateur league, we want it, and we want to push to be as professional as possible. The game day atmosphere is a very professional atmosphere. We have lots of minimum standards that we make our teams, have to meet, right? Yeah. And in some cases they don't meet them, but we're constantly striving to get them there, right? And it's always this balance of, do you go in there and throw the hammer down and kick a team out of the league? Or do you say, look, here are the things you need to improve, and we're going to help you improve those? Because, again, if we kick a team out of the league, less opportunity. Mm-hmm. So how do we bring them the standard up? How do we bring them to the level of the other teams? And it's this constant, work in progress. But, we're not finished. I mean, we've got so many things we can improve. And I think every year we do improve on things. And every year we do, try to create, more publicity for and from our perspective, when we first took over, I literally picked up the phone and called a bunch of the owners and just said, hey, we're taking over the league. What do you like about the league? What do you don't? And I heard over and over, I literally heard people say, look, I love the league because it gives us opportunity, but I'm embarrassed by the league. Mm. And what they meant was, when I go pitch to a sponsor, I don't want them looking at the website because it makes us look bad. He said, I want them looking at my website. I want them looking at my social media. I don't want them looking at the leagues. And, the first thing that kind of hit us, it was like, so we have teams that do a fantastic job and they're embarrassed about the league. We've got to change that, right? We've got to make it to where when they go do a sales pitch, it's not just about their team. It's first, here's the league we play in. Mm-hmm. This is how fantastic it is, and here's what we're trying to do. So that's been one of the things that, and again, Brad and DeBray have so much experience in minor league sports. DeBray on the sales end, of marketing and promotion and trying to find sponsors. And so he's been invaluable with helping teams figure that end out. And Brad, just from a league administration, he had so much experience with his entire life's been spent doing sports, different sports, tennis, and, all the things they did when they worked with Express and those kind of things. So, I think we've got a good, and then, I'm from the soccer background. It's mm-hmm. the passion. So it's, I think we do a good job of balancing each other out. And we have a lot of, pretty heated discussions about what we should do and disagreements. But in the end, we always keep that, that idea of creating opportunity first and foremost, and how do we make this work, and how do we make it sustainable? How do we get our teams to have more longevity, right? And it's a constant battle in, lower tiers of soccer in the U.S., right? We don't have, we're not Wrexham, right? We don't have mm-hmm. 80 years worth of background and history and those kind of things, but that's what we're trying to create. So it's a really interesting thing we do. So
I love it. I hear you using a lot of the same language whenever people ask me what the Football Factory is. What do you guys do? And I'm just like, well, I mean, We do so much, but it really just comes down to, like you said, just creating more opportunity, enabling more mass football.
Absolutely.
It's a lower league, but I don't think people realize how important lower leagues are for bigger leagues, but in general for the game. Why is a league like this so important?
So if you look at the difference between men's soccer in the United States and women's soccer, first and foremost, there are probably upwards of 80 to 100 professional men's teams in North America, if not more. I mean, when you look at all the different levels, all the different leagues. On the women's side, there's 12. There's going to be maybe 14 next year, in the NWSL, and that's it. So, if you're not one of the lucky 36 players that are going to be drafted next year, what do? I mean, we graduate, 300 plus, Division I women's programs, another 300 Division II programs, amazing number of NAI, and you graduate these phenomenal players, and their career's done, right? What do? If they were men, they'd be going playing in the USL or in the US, the second division of the USL, or in NISA, or there's all these opportunities for them. There's none for the women, right? So, the game is so far behind on the women's side. So when you take that out of it and say, okay, well, what if I can't do that? What can I do to keep that dream alive and maybe get overseas or whatever? It's our league. So we literally are like a de facto tier 2. We're the de facto USL, right? Because there is no other. And, at the same token, though, we only play 10 to 12 games during the summer because a lot of our players are still in college. So, that's where the importance lies for me, is that it's almost this like stepping stone to get to the next level. In one, there's a pool of players that are, okay, how do I get overseas? How do I make an NWSL roster? Oh, I didn't make it, but I got to keep playing. Those kind of players. But there's also a lot of collegiate players that are trying to stay fresh and everything so they can have a great college season. A lot of younger players who are looking at, how can I do better in college and how can I, but I think that's why this league's important. It's on the women's side, the game's different simply because there's not as much opportunity. And so I think a lot of young women are fantastic players, but they understand that, look, I'm done with college soccer. My career's kind of over. I'm not going to have that opportunity, but I can still play at a really high level every summer for the next 4, until they kind of move on and do something else. And so, again, it's creating opportunity, right? And we hope that professional clubs will spawn out of our league. We've had dozens of conversations about creating a professional tier 3 or working with the NWSL on creating a tier 2, just all these different ideas of how can we get more players playing, because that's one of the problems they have, right? There is no real reserve league. So we have, I guess, 4, and we're going to add a couple more, NWSL reserve clubs will put a team in our league. And they've been, the Red Stars. A lot of the Red Stars that have been on their squad have played in the WPSL, and then they kind of move up. Or they have players that are little fringe players that train with them, but they play in the WPSL, and then they get, they'll finally get an opportunity. So, that's kind of why I think the league's important. But I think in 10 years, maybe things change to where there is more of a pathway for women. But, right now, that's the importance of this league, or leagues like ours.
You're changing the culture.
We're trying to, absolutely.
How is that relationship with the NWSL?
So, I mean, what's interesting is they've had so many problems and so much turnover. Every time we think, hey, we're getting ready to get a partnership with the NWSL, then the administration changes, right? Or then the Yates report comes out. They always have a huge
changes
problem, and some, the COVID year, right? I mean, we were really close to doing, we think that year we might have had 160 teams in our league, and then there's COVID, right? So you take 2 steps backwards, and they're just scrambling, trying to make sure the league survives. And we've had multiple conversations with them, but just when we get ready for the second conversation or the third, well, then the commissioner's gone, and now there's a new one. So now we feel like we're starting from scratch, but we're gaining some traction. I think they realize the importance of a league like ours, and I think that's the important part. It's how can we work with it? And when we talked to them, we said, look, we don't want anything. What we want is a partnership where we can promote women's soccer. We've got this huge database of players. We've got a huge database of people who are fans of the game. We've got, tens of thousands of social media followers. How can we promote the women's game? How can we promote your league? What can we do?
How can we help? Like you
And
said,
at the same token, how does that help us? Well, it creates more opportunity for Whimsy. If we could magically create 50% more sponsorship dollars for the clubs in our league, well, then some of those league teams will thrive and possibly create professional players, or be able to provide a pathway for those players, or even someday become a professional club of their own, right? And that's kind of what what we're trying to create, that relationship with them. So
it does not make sense to me why there wouldn't be a relationship.
Oh, absolutely. And again, we've been really close, and it's like, oh, that person we were talking to is not there, and so, okay, let's start from scratch. And then we've got really good connections with U.S. Soccer. One of our associate commissioners, who does a lot of liaison with U.S. Soccer. And I mean, she knows Carlos Cardera, she knows Bill Taylor, she knows and they're constantly, working to how can we help you guys get a better fit with the NWSL. But again, I think it's a little bit of time, but I think we're getting close to where,
I feel it sounds like it is, and when it happens, it's going to be
great.
It's going to be great. Now, you've mentioned too. Are there any other women leagues that happen here in the U.S.?
So there's two leagues that are very similar to ours, right? There used to be the WPSL was it. That was the only league. In probably 2012, 13, the gentleman that ran the league, Jerry, kind of had a big disagreement, falling out with his commissioner at the time, over lots of different things. I'm not going to get into who's right, who was wrong, whatever. But they withdrew. It took 8 teams with them and started their own league. Called the UWS. That league is mostly in this, Michigan, Ohio, and in the Northeast, but they've expanded. Like, they've got a West region, but it's 1 team in California, 1 in Arizona, 1 in Utah, and 2 in Canada. So that kind of gives
difficult.
It's really difficult because they just don't have the
proximity
and they have recently, in the last couple of years, started a center part of the country and in Texas, but I think that's getting ready to fold. I mean, again, when you're small, the biggest issue is the individual clubs have to pay a lot of money for travel, right? And that's the biggest expense. And so, one of the great things about the WPSL is we have 130, 140 teams. We can limit travel in most cases to 3 to 4 hours. And so now, instead of overnight stays, which are very expensive, and spending thousands and thousands of dollars in travel, you're investing the money in your club, and that's, I think that helps the league grow. But that's one of the leagues. And then I'm not going to say anything negative about the USL, but they for years have been talking about running a pro league. We're going to have a pro league. We're going to have a pro league. When they rolled out what everyone thought was their pro league, the W League, it's literally the exact same thing we do. So we feel it was a little bit of smoke and mirrors, right? They roll this thing out. And then when you talk to people, they're like, oh, well, that's a professional league. And you say, no, same players, same time frame, everything. That league has hurt us a little bit. There are a lot of our clubs had USL men's clubs.
Yeah, they do.
And I think they were, I know, they were pressured quite a bit to move their women's club to the USL. We had some clubs contact us saying that they have to go to the USL because they're trying to get a USL to the W League because they're trying to get a USL, franchise or territory, and they're basically told if they don't do both, they can't have the men's. So it's hurt us quite a bit. What's interesting is they have some of the same issues with travel, etc. And again, there's some things they do really well. They've got a staff of 30 or 40 people. Their website's amazing. The articles they put out, those kind of things of publicity. But bottom line is, it's the same level of players, same level of teams. The teams that left our league to go play there, Brad did a pretty interesting survey study, and they actually had a lower winning percentage in our league than when they moved. So they did worse in our league than they did in the W League in their first year, which for me pretty much says that our league is a little bit tougher. But it's like any other league. You take the top third of the teams are really, really good. The middle third struggle, depending on the week, week to week, and the bottom third aren't very good. They're trying to get better, and their league's like ours. I mean, it's very similar. So, I'm kind of two minds, because in one respect, more soccer, better, right? Más football, more opportunity. That's fantastic. But when they're literally creating opportunity by just taking teams from other leagues. I don't know if that's creating more opportunity or it's just shuffling the deck, But again, I think there's some things they do really well. And the other thing too, we've had this conversation about a lot of things. Competition makes you better, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's so we've got this competition. So what do we need to do better? How can we improve things? And so literally from the moment, we always had competition with the UWS, who does some things really well. But now we've got this third player. So now it's just, it's that much more competition. We have to be that much better. And
I love that.
That's kind of the way we look at it.
Let's stop the league side. I want to talk a little bit about yourself. I read a little bit about it, and that's why I wore my Germany shirt.
Yeah.
Because I had read that you're half German.
Yes.
Tell me just a little bit about your upbringing, because I can hear the passion about the soccer, but where did the passion come from?
Well, so what's interesting is my parents could have cared less about sports.
Really?
My dad was in the military, met my mom in Germany. My brother was born there. I was born shortly after they moved back here to the States. When I was young, I spent every summer literally with my mom in Germany with my grandparents. I got to watch a lot of soccer, got to go to some games. My uncle was a Kaiserslautern fan, and so he would take me to games. And, I, from an early age, really enjoyed it. But, I grew up in Ohio in the country, and there was no soccer. And it was interesting. The year that they were going to start soccer in our town was the year I moved to Oklahoma.
Oh.
So I moved to Oklahoma, and, there, it was my first experience with soccer was in Oklahoma and Edmond. So, I don't know if I got the passion from them because, like I said, they could have cared less about sports, honestly. And I think it was more I started playing with a really good group. My first coach was a German gentleman named Peter Keckel, who played at a very, very high level, growing up, and he was a fantastic coach. And kind of became a father figure for a lot of us, and so my parents were divorced when I was kind of early. So he was always there, training, taking us to games and things like that. And so I guess that, and the fact that, my wife always says, well, that's where you find your comfort. Well, it's because the group of guys I played with were my buddies, right? And so I think from that perspective, that's kind of where that came from, is that those guys were always there. They were the constant. And, it was always, the best times of my life were training on the soccer field,
So what did soccer teach you?
Oh, I mean, I think growing up, it kept me out of a lot of trouble. Because, again, my parents were divorced when I was in that, and, my mom worked nights. My dad wasn't around. So I was lucky to be teammates with a lot of kids that had really great parents. And so, again, it kept me out of trouble. I knew that if I wanted to play, I couldn't do a lot of things. But the game, what does it teach you, right? Teach you teamwork. It teach you, there's a lot of failures in soccer.
A lot of humbling moments.
Absolutely. And so you learn from those, right? You just learn, I've got to work harder. I've got to get better. Again, it's a weird sport, right? Because you can play fantastic and lose 1-0, and so you just learn a lot of life lessons. That's kind of the way life works. You can do everything right, and then something happens, right? And so, okay, what do I do? Well, I pick myself up and I go on, So, I think those are the things. I think I've learned more probably as I became a coach from dealing with people and dealing with kids and, having kids of my own and then kind of saying, okay, well, here's what you can and can't do, I think I probably, like I said, I've learned more from coaching soccer about just people, and from kids to adults, et cetera, and then, dealing in a league, learning a lot about people and, people's motives for doing things. And,
Are you still coaching?
Absolutely. Yeah. I volunteer coach, in Norman with the Celtic program because, my daughter's there, but, I haven't coached my daughter's team. I've always kind of been an assistant or helped with that group, but had another team. This year I told them, it's my daughter's last year. I want to make sure I'm focused, and get to watch her as much as I can. So this year I'm just working with her team. And then, my wife thinks it's time for me to hang it up but I've already, spoken with them, possibly taking a U11 team next year or working. From my perspective, I'm so busy doing other things and I don't want to miss my youngest daughter playing in college. So if I do coach, it'll be with another coach, to where we'll run an age group or something together to where that guy's responsible, he gets paid for it and everything else. I'm just helping, because that way I can, kind of cut loose and go do what I need to do as well. So
Is this coaching therapeutic for you now?
Absolutely.
Is this what
Yeah,
keeps you sane from everything else that you do?
Yeah, I can see why coaches that do it for a living get burnt out, because it's a lot, and it's a, they think, oh, what a great life and everything, but there's so much that goes in that's involved, and if you're constantly trying to improve and become a better coach, it takes a lot of time. But for me, it's like the best time is when I get on the field in the evening, right? And I really enjoy it because I'm in an office all day, with the phone and with the computer and talking to people and making decisions, and I get out there and it's just fun for me. So yeah, for me it's therapy. I don't know that I'll ever quit coaching.
That's what I was going to say.
Just because because like I said, it's therapy. Now, when I'm no longer working, maybe that's the time to quit doing that as well. But that's not going to be for a little while, I think.
I like that term that you used. I think I might give a shot at being a volunteer coach because I just like the way that you put that. So I might have to grab that one from you.
Yeah.
With this being your daughter's last year, how is that, considering all the years and all the cycles that you've done with club soccer and now watching her go into her collegiate level? Where are you with that?
Yeah, it's interesting, because she's, the youngest. And again, I've got a son as well. My oldest, who grew up in that, was a 91. So he grew up playing against Cuervo. And
I was a 91 as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So he played started out with Padova and then played for the Royals and then played in Norman a little bit. So he, kind of bounced around, playing. So you guys probably stood on the sidelines and watched him play against you. But no, it's interesting. It's watching the last one kind of go through. I mean, I've learned a lot with the other ones. And I think first and foremost, what I probably have learned is it can be my passion, it can be my wife's passion. It doesn't matter unless it's their passion, right? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And that's the same. I can get my kid to every opportunity that's out there. It's 100% whether they want to do it or not. And I think that's something that parents miss. They should kind of be on the sidelines and enjoy the experience and enjoy the time and enjoy the other folks they're there with. But if their kid's either going to make the decision to be good and make the decision to work hard and make the decision to progress, or they're not. And there's not a lot you can do. You can provide them opportunity. That's about it. You can't provide a motive. I mean, Alexi Vizarellis, who I coached with a lot, who's a great friend of mine, he would always say, he said, I can't motivate players. I can coach motivated players. But if I have to motivate you, we have a problem. And it's the truth. I mean, it's kids that want to get better are going to get better because they're going to work at it and they're going to be motivated. And that's, I think, one thing a lot of parents miss.
I would think that it'd be hard now with all the distractions that are going around to keep some kids motivated, but it is also work in favor for the ones that are motivated because there's just so much out there.
Absolutely. I mean, there are so many unbelievable training tools and things that, it used to be, well, if there's no kids playing in the neighborhood, how am I going to get better? Well, it used to be the whole thing about a wall, right? Well, now there's a wall and there's literally apps for $5.99 a month that give you 1,000 different things to do and track your progress. And, again, if a player wants to get better, there's no reason they can't get better. But again, it's intrinsic, right? It's something I'm always telling the players I coach. I said, you guys are on your phone 4 or 5 hours a day. Spend 20 minutes of that time or 30 minutes instead of being on TikTok or Snapchat or whatever, and put that app on and get better with your ball skills and those kind of things. And again, there's, like you said, there's so many opportunities out there, but is the special player is the one that's going to take those opportunities, right? And it's going
to be dedicated from day one. And if there's anything that I've learned from all these conversations with professionals and stories that I've heard, it's those players that move as professionals at the age of 12, 13, and from then on. There is no slacking off. There is no taking breaks. It's literally dedication from day one. Makes you where you are.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's, there comes along a kid who's just God-given talent and athleticism and everything. And a lot of those are busts because they don't have the work ethic. Where a lot of the players that don't have as much athleticism, but they've got that just
the fire.
Grind and the fire. They get better. They will themselves to get into that position. And then, every once in a while you get both. You get a kid with that, young man or young woman who's got that amazing talent, God-given athleticism, God-given ability, and they do the best with it. They work, they work it, and those are the special players that come around every so often.
Have you seen any special players come around
through here?
Yes.
Oh yeah. I've been very fortunate in Oklahoma to be coach with a lot of different clubs. I coached with with OFC at the time. It's now the Energy. OEFC. Norman. There's been a lot of really, really good players that have come from Oklahoma. And to be around some of those players, on the female side, the entire 90-91 age group that Hampton had was amazing, and how that much talent came from Oklahoma. And I still think the maybe second all-time leading goal scorer was a girl named Jordan Calhoun at TCU. I think her record just got broken. She was one of those kids. Wow. She's an Oklahoma kid, played for Hampton. Some of those players went on to really great careers. I don't know that we've had a lot of females really break through on the professional ranks. I wasn't around to see the Remy sisters from Norman who were amazing. I got to see Ann Remy play when she was older. She's phenomenal. I can see why she did so well. But there's been a lot of players, I think, with the talent to play professionally if there were more opportunity. If they wanted to go overseas, etc. There's a young lady that plays for Oklahoma City FC or has played in the past named Yasmin Ryan from Norman, who is playing for the Portland Thorns now. Started in the NWSL championship game, and extremely good player, extremely good athlete. But I think I've seen other players as good as her that just maybe didn't get the opportunity or didn't continue with it, but she's a fantastic player, and she's from Norman, Oklahoma, So I think those players are out there. That's the one thing on the women's side. Now on the men's side, there's been a lot of fantastic players come from Oklahoma. And again, I think part of the fact that there's so much opportunity for men, they get to foster that. There's a young man right now playing in, I believe it's Croatia. Amazing, amazing player. He's my daughter's age. My daughter's actually friends with him. Wow. They met when they were much younger, not as involved in soccer through other friends, and they text and that kind of thing back and forth a little bit. And look at that kid. He's going to be on. That young man probably in the next World Cup will be a kid from Stillwater, Oklahoma, who's playing in the World Cup. I think DK, if he wasn't,
and if he didn't get that injury,
if Daryl wasn't injured, I think he might be there right now. So I think we're getting really close. There's the Sebastian Ibegwa and Christian Ibegwa were fantastic players. There's the what's the young man's name now from played at Heritage Hall?
You're talking about he's
just played in the NWSL. Yeah,
there's Lamar as well.
Lamar Batista, that's the young
Lamar. Okay.
Garrett McLaughlin is doing really well in the league. So there's a lot of really good players that come from Oklahoma. Yeah. We're just I think we're getting close to having a kid that on the men's and women's side as well on the national team. I think maybe in the next 10 years, right, that happens.
Yeah. When you were talking to me about women's and not being very many professionals, but bringing up all these players that had, like you said, potential, if not more than the ones that have made it, and then knowing that you are working on bringing more opportunity, I'm just sitting here thinking to myself, how is anyone not getting riled up? Because you see it as the coach, and then you see all these players that just don't get to reach their potential. So now it's your mission through this to provide those opportunities for those types of players. Yes, it just kind of, I'm building up a little fire just hearing you talk about it.
Well, and what's incredible about our league, and that's what I think people don't understand, they come watch our, the level of women's soccer you can watch.
They'll be surprised.
In Mustang, Oklahoma on a Saturday night. They'll be shocked at how many. One of the, I think was a Big 12 Player of the Year this year was Trinity Byers. I think I believe she won the. She's one of the top goal scorers in the NCAA. Is from Texas. She played on our field twice last year.
World Cup players.
And she's played in the. I think she just came back from the U20 World Cup. Those players are playing in our league all the time. Really, really good players, and unfortunately, sometimes they're playing in front of 163 people. And players like that. Again, I think she's got a shot to be on the full national team at some point. There's all sorts of players in our league like that. They're, just amazing really talented players that, day in, day out during the summer, that they can be found in a WPSL game anywhere in the country.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, it's something if you've got a daughter that plays or a young boy that plays, I mean, you really need to get out and support a team. Whether it's Tulsa, whether it's us, whether you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, anywhere, you need to find one of those teams and support it.
Where do you soccer in here in Oklahoma City?
So
I know that right now,
amateur level, on a professional level,
as
club
the
level,
culture through our clubs, through our amateur. I wouldn't want to say amateur. I think this is, what would you say, semi-professional?
Yeah, I mean, I think the W League has coined the pre-professional level.
Pre-professional,
and I think that's fair, because I think it's when you say amateur, the Sunday League is amateur as well,
that's
right?
amateur, but this is
Soccer City indoor on Wednesday, that's amateur as well. But I think this is a different level than that. So that might be a good, and to call it semi-pro, well, maybe it's semi-pro, but players aren't paid. Their expenses are paid. Those kind of things. So, it's somewhere along those levels. Yeah. So, in Oklahoma, I mean, there's some great. I think on the men's side, there's some great, great
college
teams.
Programs
College programs here are amazing. A lot of really good players come through here. Maybe not at the Division I level, but a lot of these NAI teams can compete with almost any Division I program in the country. Junior colleges are fantastic here. We got some of the, Seminole and some of the better. Rose State does a great job. I mean, I think that level has gotten really good. Division II has done really well. NAI, there's a lot of perennial powers around here on both the men's and women's side. So, that part I think is really good. On the club side, there's really good coaches. There's some really not so good coaches. There's folks that just do it for a paycheck. There's folks that are, there's just a mixed bag, I think. I think every club in Oklahoma City has some really good coaches. I think every club in Oklahoma City has some really average coaches. It's kind of a mixed bag, right? I think what's interesting is, I've had this conversation with several, people in Oklahoma City. If Oklahoma City had one club that was competing at the highest level, I think we'd be nationally ranked. I mean, we'd be one. There's a lot of talent, but the talent's always really divided between, OEFC and Celtic and South Lakes and Ranger. I mean, it's split up, and is that a good thing or is it a bad thing? I think both. Sometimes it's good because they're competing against one another to get better. But I think there's also, wow, it would be great if we had one club that represented Oklahoma City.
That would bring a different type of opportunity.
Absolutely,
for
yeah.
Those players.
And I think in order to do that, you'd have to have, the 4 or 5 top clubs in Oklahoma City work together and form a club together. Regardless of what you want to call it, United, Oklahoma City FC, whatever, and all work together to push their players to there. But in order for that to happen, they can't play against the local teams, right? They have to play against Dallas or Houston or whatever. You can't. We've had this debate over and over again about professional soccer. It's tough to promote and push your players to a club that you're going to be competing against, right? And that's why no one does it. So, I don't know. I think that's the pipe dream, right? If you won the lottery to start an academy, would be free for players that could play at the highest level. But I will tell you, when you talk about talent in Oklahoma, I think there's enough talent to where an academy like that would do well. I mean, we'd be very, very competitive. For as small of a state as we are, et cetera, I still think it'd be very competitive with some of the bigger clubs. But, will that ever happen? Who knows,
Can it? Could it happen? Do you think it'd be possible to, in your wildest dreams, if you answered my question that I wanted to ask, is if you were given the keys, if you became the president
we won the Powerball, right?
Yeah.
I think it would. I think it's possible. Do I think the pieces are in place for it to happen right now? No, absolutely not. I think just the model of soccer in general in the United States and everything's pay for play and and it's a lot of people make a lot of money from it. I think it's going to make it very difficult. And again, I don't. It's a lot of people do a really good job. They earn the money that they earn, et cetera. Except it makes it very difficult, right? When that's the motivator for a lot of clubs, it's numbers and it's those kids. It's tough to get to that level. It's tough to give up some of the power I have because I have these coaches and these players in order to make it, what's my motivation for pushing a player on to another, and it's, like I said, I don't think that's a negative thing on anyone.
No,
it's just
no,
the
no.
opportunity's not there. Right. But again, like you said, if you won the lottery and you started an academy that took, U13 to U19 and got maybe an MLS Next Academy or even boys and girls ECNL, but it was free.
Mm-hmm. Boy, wouldn't that be the dream?
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely, because then everyone would want to play. That
Everyone.
Yeah, and so, but again, is that going to happen? Does someone have, $2 million a year to finance an operation like that? Probably not.
No.
So.
Do you have any other type of pipe dream like this, or is this the one that just keeps you up at night sometimes?
No, I think it's too late for my kids to go through that. Maybe my grandkids can look at something like that. I don't know. I mean, that would be great. It would be great to have a really good professional, men's side that's well run, along with a professional women's side. It would be fantastic in Oklahoma. Is that going to happen in the near future? I doubt it. We'll see.
We will see. Well, let's get a little fun. The World Cup's here.
Yes.
I'm curious if you have any World Cup experiences. Have you ever visited one?
So, in 1986.
Okay, Mexico.
I was a college student at Oklahoma State, and so 4 of my buddies and I got in my 1976 Oldsmobile Cutlass and drove. Literally, we watched 10 games in 11 days.
10 games in 11 days.
We literally just no plan, no rhyme or reason. Each of us had about $200, and one guy had a credit card, and we drove to Monterey, watched a couple games. Drove to Querétaro and watched games, drove to León and watched games, we didn't get all the way to Mexico City, but we probably drove 3,000 miles in Mexico, just going, we'd go, okay, there's games there tomorrow, can we make it? And we'd drive all night, which was one of the I would never in a million years do that now. I'm too conservative to even attempt something like that. But yeah, got a lot of really crazy stories about that. But we met some amazing people. Saw a lot of games. We were dumb, and we were, 20 years old, 22 years old, and we just, okay, let's do it. Again, had a lot of really. I could spend 2 hours telling you about that trip, but
give me just a little.
Just a little. So we were in a place called Querétaro, which is unbelievably beautiful city. We didn't have any idea what to expect. There was a brand new soccer stadium there, and I think Germany was there, and maybe Scotland or something. We're like, let's go watch a game there. So we get there. It's incredible. It's built like, 15th, 16th century. It was crazy. There's huge churches, and there's an aqueduct, and there's all this it was like, wow, it was like being in Europe. It really was. Yeah. Beautiful place. They do a lot of silver mining there, right? So we, find a hotel, of course, one of us would go check in, and 4 guys would sleep on the floor in one room because we had no money.
I love it.
And so, we get up the next day, and we're walking up the hill to get to the stadium, and we go and watch a game, and then we're walking back, and this truck pulls up next to us, and these guys, one of the guys with us spoke Spanish, a buddy of mine who grew up in Ecuador. And so he said they want to take us to a party. And we're kind of like, yeah, is this a good deal? And along the way, we met an English soldier that was from Belize that was kind of traveling with us. My roommate was from England. And so he was kind of chumming with us. So there were 6 of us, although 5 of us went. And we're like, yeah, let's go. And so they said, well, they had a pickup truck. I said, hop in. And we're like, should we do this? We don't know these people.
Red flags.
Okay,
red flags.
Yeah, okay, good. Hey, yeah, what the heck? We jump in. So we're driving kind of through town, and my friend Mike is talking to them through the window, and they said, yeah, we're going to go. We're having a party. And pretty soon we drive out of the town, and we get on the highway, and we start driving, and we start looking at each other going like, where are we going? We're leaving the town, and we started to panic a little bit, like, and we kind of joked later on about, we're going to end up working in a silver mine in Mexico and not get home. But ended up going, we're only on the highway for maybe a minute or two, pulled over into this industrial area, come up to this really nice facility with this fence outside, open up, pull up, the guy honks, and we're literally like on the verge of jumping and running. And this big garage door opens up, and there's, probably 15 people inside. But there were, a roasted pig and drafts of beer. And within, an hour, there's 100 people there, and could not have been the nicer people. It was a gentleman whose family came from Spain. He was a cattle rancher. Very, very wealthy guy. And he invited us the next night to his house, and we got to meet him. And he was a really great, amazing people. But we had a lot of stories like that where it was like, maybe it's sketchy, maybe it's not, but it was every time it was incredible. Fantastic. Everywhere we went really great people who were proud of their country. The other thing that was interesting is literally we would get, of course at that time we didn't have cell phones and GPS and everything else. So you're literally with a paper map.
Yeah.
And the maps, it's like, okay, well, there's this, big 4-lane highway going here, right? And so as soon as you would get outside of town, there was no highway.
Yeah,
the highway would disappear, and literally it was 2 lanes, with trucks pulled over, and people camping on the side, and we're driving at night, and and it was like the maps looked like there were 4 lanes, but of course they wanted to present this great, image of this modern country, and at the time it wasn't, and again, the venues were incredible and the people were amazing, but we had a lot of stories about just barely getting back, So anyway, it was a great time. I'll never forget that. And then, that was the one World Cup we got to go to. And then the other one was, the one they had here in the States, which, I was married at the time, and I guess it was 94. I had a couple little kids, and, got to take my wife to a couple games, which was a really cool experience here in the States.
How different will this World Cup coming up be compared to the one that you experienced in 94?
Well, I think... So again, let me give you one other, 99 in the U.S., Women's World Cup. So, I've little kids. I said to my wife, I said, what do you want to do this summer? She said, I don't know. What do you want? And I said, I want to go to the World Cup final in Pasadena. And she had family in California. So we said, okay, let's make a trip. We rented an RV. We literally, this is a great story too, but, so, lo and behold, the World Cup starts and the U.S. goes on this roll, and all of a sudden it's, they become media darlings, and I don't think anyone anticipated at the time. So we have tickets to the World Cup final. And so we literally rent an RV. So we've got this RV with this big 1-800 RV for rent on the side of it, and we travel, through the desert, and we see things on the way out to go to the World Cup final. Of course, at that time, that was in 99, right? So still didn't have cell phones, et cetera. But we ended up, finding a hotel. So we're driving out there. My wife said, well, do we have any place to stay in Pasadena? And I was like, well, I just thought we'd get a hotel when we got here. Of course, I'm stupid. I didn't know it would be.
Man, I don't know how we did it back in the day.
We literally have to stop because we didn't have a cell phone. And, you stop and you start making, trying to call and figure out where you're going to stay. And the only hotel with any rooms at all was the Ritz-Carlton in Pasadena. Which was like $400 a night, which at the time was just ridiculous amount of money. So we rented one room. There were, my wife, myself, 4 of our kids. So there were 6 of us. And it's like, that's it. That's the only thing we could find. So we got, like I said, 1 double. We didn't tell them we had 6 people. It's just, it's our kids and us, kind of a deal. Yep. And so we come rolling up in Pasadena. We'd been driving all night. The kids are literally like in the back of the RV in their underwear, because it's hot and it's the middle of the summer. And we pull up to this place, and it looks like, a scene from The Bachelor. It's this round place where you valet, and there's, a Maserati and all these amazing vehicles. And we come up in this big RV that says 1-800 RV for rent. Look like the clamp. It's just, pulling up. And I remember my wife looking at me going, what have you gotten us into? And so, we come pulling up there, and the valet one's out there. It's like, no, you can't park here. You got to take it around back. They didn't want that thing anywhere near the front. So anyway, we check it. It turns out that's the host hotel for the U.S. national team. Wow. So, we get there. We get to go to the game. My daughter JC is the youngest one. She's 2.5,
Wow.
Sitting in my lap watching the U.S. national team win
watching history.
Watching the Women's World Cup, yeah. And I remember getting back to the hotel when we finally got, we had to walk forever, it seemed like, and find a taxi, and we finally get back. And there's the U.S. national team is in our hotel, partying because they just won the World Cup. Yeah, it was, all the national team staff was there, which was cool. The kids got to meet a lot of players and everything. And, for my daughter, Alyssa, gosh, she was like, 7 at the time. It was just an amazing experience for them to get to experience that. That's probably the best World Cup story for me, because I got to be there with my family, with my daughters. And
wow, that's amazing. But sometimes life, just... You couldn't have planned that.
Oh, no.
You know what I'm saying?
No, and at the time, what was weird is, it's 100. I was thinking the Rose Bowl. We had tickets literally like 30 rows from the top on the 50-yard line. It was, because when I ordered tickets, it was like, well, I want those. It was.
What was the price? Just curious on the ticket.
It was face price. It was whatever it was. It was like $26 or something. It wasn't expensive because I don't think anyone anticipated what it was going to become.
You had.
It wasn't. I ordered them like in the pre-sale, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like in January, saying, hey, I'd like to get 8 tickets. And I think we had 8. There were 6 of us that went. And I think we sold 2 outside or something or gave them to someone we met. And, of course, in today's day with Ticketmaster and everything else, it would have been $6,000 to get to go to that, right? Which at the time, though, I just put in for this. And it was, okay, yeah, you've been selected. I don't think at the time they probably had 5,000 people wanting tickets to it because if you remember it just kind of grew. That whole thing just kind of grew during the summer, and our team doing so well, kind of just fostered this crazy momentum.
As you were watching the momentum build, it was a little bit in your head thinking we might just get to see the U.S. women's team play in the final.
Yeah, that's what the hope was, right? And of course we were very good at the time. We always, but yeah, to anticipate what happened there, no, not in a million years. But we didn't care. Honestly, didn't care who it was. We were going to go have our family vacation and then go to Disneyland and go to Southern California and visit my wife's family and come home. But yeah, who could have known that was what the outcome was going to be? I had no idea.
Such a rich experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
The more I grow old, and now that I have 2 kids, I'm realizing how valuable those experiences are. Even if you have to scrape by and unfortunately get a $400 hotel room for one night for 6 kids, those experiences are something that they're never going to forget.
No, and my kids remember. JC doesn't. She does. She was too young. The rest of them all remember it. They remember how hot it was. They remember, it was blazing hot. It was, they literally remember all of it. The older ones do.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, I appreciate your time. This was great.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to leave any of the listeners with? How can we find you?
Yeah, let me give you our sales pitch, right?
There we go. Hit me with that.
Again, WPSL, the Oklahoma City FC Club, we're on all the social media channels.
I brought my scarf. I dare I not wear it. I
got this when I
got my first season ticket.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, again, we've started a U21 program, so we have a lot of young players out there. Please, the one thing that we need is support. And again, we've never made money doing it. We lose a lot of money every summer, and that's not that big of a deal. We're going to keep doing it, but it's not about ever even breaking even. It's about getting folks out there to support these players. And again, I would love for young players to get to come out there and watch these kids, watch these young ladies. We've got ex-professionals on the field. The other teams bring in amazing players, and we're very good. We've always been very competitive. I think we, Brad could tell you, but we've got like the 5th all-time best record in the league. And we've had a couple, not so great years in the last couple of years, but we've got. I think we've been in the Final Four. We've been there twice. And I think we've qualified 4 times, but in the early days when Jimmy was running the program, they didn't have the funds to travel all the time. But so no, we've got a very good program. There's some very good teams that come in. It's a great way to spend a Saturday evening. It's costs less than a movie, and it's a really good atmosphere. We get a lot of things for the kids to do, but that would help us a lot. Continue this thing going on, and whether it's supporting the U21s, the younger players that are getting the opportunity, or the older players. I know they appreciate it. They really enjoy looking over and seeing, a lot of friends and family and folks.
There are local players.
Absolutely. They're almost all local players. They're all. And that's one great thing during the summer. You got kids from South Lakes and from Celtic and from
Bishop McGinnis.
from all the different high schools. OU and OSU. Usually we get 3 or 4 players from each of the colleges. Oklahoma City University, Oklahoma Christian, USAO, MACU. We get this, and they come together and they get to play together for a summer. So they're not always playing against each other. They and they have a really good time with one another. It's for a lot of the really good players, the pressure's off. Because it's not their college season, so they get to really enjoy it. They get to enjoy the process. They get to enjoy playing. They're not worried about, do I get to start or not start? Do I get to sub? If someone's coming in for me, oh God, is that going to affect me next game? They just get to enjoy the game, right? And that's the one thing we hear from the players the most is just how much they really enjoy playing during the summer with different players and with different styles, different, coaching points, etc. So, that's, if I can leave with anything, please come out, support it. And the other thing too is I think there are so many really good college programs here. I know the fall is a very busy time. But men's or women's, get out and, if you have nothing to do on a Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday afternoon, whatever, go watch a game because I think it'll help your children if they play, but it'll support the players that are in college, support those programs. So.
Support the culture. Where will home field be this year?
It'll be again Mustang High School.
High School.
I don't know if you've been out there or not. They've got a fantastic grass field, which is really important for us. What's interesting is they've got a unbelievable locker room, and one of the things Evan Dressel, who you had as a guest previously, he said it's so hard for us to it's so hard for us to recruit because their high school locker room is better than our college locker room.
Yeah.
So we've got this amazing facility. The school district out there and Coach Foreman, who's the athletic director, just basically give us the keys and say take care of it. And we help support the high school program out there, but. It's an amazing place to play. Everyone that comes there is like, wow, this is great. I can't believe it's an intimate setting. It's got great stands. There's a lot of places to be on the sidelines. We've got on one end, we've got the locker rooms and everything, which make it, really great. And it's not turf, which for the players, for me during the summer when it's so hot is fantastic. So, I mean, that's where we play our home games and it's easy to get to, with the new turnpike in and everything. You can get there anywhere from Oklahoma City very easily. So. Look forward to seeing folks out there this summer.
Nice. I thought of another question when you brought it up, but what are some of the standards that you have here for Oklahoma City FC? Like, what are your pre-game things that you would like to see? Like, what are you bringing to this team that makes it different from every other team in the league? So,
what we try to do differently, and again, there's some things we've done well in the past. It costs nothing. You have to pay a fee to try out, and that's it. We pay for all the coaching. We pay for transportation. We usually charter a bus when we travel. We travel together. We give the players per diem. So, I mean, it's a free opportunity to participate. We try to run it as professional as we can. I mean, so we literally live stream our games. We have Todd Lisenby and Ryan Chapman this last summer did some of our games, but we have got color commentary. We've got the music playing, the press box. We try to make it as we have a professional walkout with music. We introduce the players. We want to make it as professional as an experience as we can. A lot of the players, the ones that come from Division I programs get to experience some of that. The ones that don't from a Division II, they're like, wow, this is great. It's
might
something.
Be their only opportunity.
Might be the only opportunity. Okay. But we literally want it to look like a professional game. And the level, again, is amazing. And it's the biggest thing we get when new teams come into the league. When you call them at the end of the season, hey, what did you think? What the first thing that always comes out is we really underestimated the level of play. There's very few teams that come to the league and do really well. They struggle year one because they didn't think the players were that good, and then they said, it stands to reason. Not much. We got a lot of ex-professionals playing, but so that's the one thing we want to try to really. We want it to for the young fans and for the kids coming out and watching as well as the players. We want it to be a professional atmosphere. This is like a semi-pro game. That's the goal. So,
I love it. Well, I hope the listeners are really soaking this in and realizing that there is this type of high-level soccer in Oklahoma City.
Absolutely.
I feel like very many people don't know that. So our job is now to make as many people know about
Absolutely.
it.
And with the news that came out last week with the energy, again, maybe a team comes back in the future, as the energy, maybe they come back as something else, who knows, right? But there's, a great men's team, the Oklahoma City 1889, Mark
Imps.
Moore and Dustin Hooker, run that operation, do a great job, really great players. And the same thing for us. So, there is still soccer to support, right? So, I know that a lot of Energy fans are really disappointed right now. But hey, there's going to be 10, 12, 14 games this summer between that men's team and our women's team of really good local soccer with local players. And so, I'd encourage those folks to come out and watch it and, really, really see if they can get into it. And again, maybe we can be the placeholder for some of those supporter groups until the professional team comes back. And that'd be great,
No, we don't want to be placeholders. We want to keep those supporters.
Yeah, well, we'd love to keep as many as we
want to
can.
show them
Absolutely.
what they're missing and how they're honestly just missing out on this.
Yeah.
What would a multi-purpose stadium, would that benefit the Oklahoma City FC team?
Potentially, right? It depends on who runs it.
Yeah.
Who's going to operate it, whether we're something they'd want to have there. There's so many factors that go into that.
Why wouldn't we want?
Hey,
I understand.
I'm don't want to get into all that mess, but it really depends, right? So for me, if it was ideal and you had the ideal ownership group there, absolutely, right? Instead of using the facility for 16 games during the year, why not have the Imps play there? Why not have us play some games there, right? And maybe it goes from 16 to 30 games. Maybe there's a way to incorporate that in a season ticket package, whatever, to where you can, maybe we can play before their game. I know there are league rules and stuff about fields being cleared so many hours in advance and all this junk, but there's ways that I think that it could benefit us and could benefit soccer in Oklahoma City. And from the same token, maybe we have some fans that have never seen a men's game, but they come out because their daughters have played for us, right? And so they enjoy the game. Maybe they'd go turn out to be a fan of the men's game as well. So could it potentially benefit? Yeah. I do know that, right now, because we run the league, one of the things we did when we took the league over was we basically have our national championship in Oklahoma. And, Brad DeBray and I are all Oklahomans. And the first thing we said was, why are we moving our national championship game all over the country? We've got amazing facility, an amazing airport, great people.
Top
the
10
stadium,
city.
the stadium in Stillwater is one of the best soccer stadiums in the entire country. So we've been lucky enough to work with them to host the national championship there. And so, if there's a multi-purpose stadium in Oklahoma City that would allow us to potentially host it here, hey, that would be great. Maybe that can happen in the future. But there's a lot of factors that go into that, whether the thing's even going to get built, right? I know it's supposed to, but
That's
if there's
true.
no tenant, are they going to spend the money on it? Or does inflation cause them to use that money for some of these other projects that the city needs,
That'd be a shame. As a person that pays taxes in the city, I would think that a multi-purpose stadium would benefit us in more than one way. I know that the rugby community is big here.
Absolutely.
The soccer community is huge here. High school football, high school soccer, the possibilities are endless. So,
Absolutely.
I don't see why we could not see that. But again, there's, like you said, many other factors. So I'll just, as a person that doesn't have a horse in the race, we'll try to be one of the loudest ones to
absolutely.
see what I want to have happen. But I really appreciate this conversation with you.
Yes, sir. I did too. It was a lot of fun.
How do you have all this soccer knowledge and then all this administrative knowledge and all these skills? How do you compartmentalize that? How do you keep yourself sane? Because after this, what switch are you going to flip? Are you going to go?
Well, I've got to go to my real job.
Yeah.
And it's what's interesting is I enjoy doing this. There's a lot of things that are factors that overlap, right? I mean, if you run a business, you've got to learn how to treat customers. You got to learn how to treat employees. You have to learn how to deal with people. That's not a lot different than coaching, right? Who are our customers? Our customers are the kids, right? That we want to. So there's a lot of overlap. The same principles you use in coaching or dealing with soccer teams or running the WPSL are the same ones that you deal with in business. That you want to value relationships. You want to be honest. You want to set your moral compass high and know that things are being done the right way. You want to tell people the truth. That there's all these things that overlap. I think in life in general. Sometimes it's hard though when I get a phone call about Oklahoma City FC and then I've got my real job I'm dealing with, and then at the same time something's going on with it. It's again, but you just kind of learn to multitask and just figure it out and go on. And hopefully do as good of a job as I can with all of them. I think a lot of times one suffer over the other, etc. And
balance is hard.
it's hard, and it's especially hard. And my wife makes sure I know this. I've got an amazing wife who's who's, like I said, just an incredible person. She makes sure that I'm balanced, right? I mean, she tells me exactly the way it is, right? She does not sugarcoat anything, and she makes sure that I know what's important, and that I keep focused on those things. And sometimes it's not what I want to hear, but it's usually what I need to hear.
I understand it.
So from that perspective, it kind of tries to keep things in balance. But
nice. Shout out to our amazing wife.
Yes, absolutely. None of this would happen without her. I can tell you that and people that know us pretty well know that that's true. That she's the kind of the driving force behind everything, and she allows me to do this. To be quite honest with you, I think she's made a lot of sacrifices so I can do the things I've done, and it's very much appreciated. But it's the truth. It's what it is.
Amen. Amen. Would you consider yourself an ambitious person?
I mean,
dreamer.
Maybe
Visionary?
kind of a dreamer. I wouldn't say. I mean, I think those are all kind of
Yeah.
There's a lot of things I'd like to see happen. I think I'm kind of one that would rather make it happen behind the scenes. Do I have some ideas that are pretty strong? Yeah. I mean, of how we can make it happen. I think one of the things I'm fairly good at is I'm not so opinionated about things that I can't listen to other people and sit down and try to figure out a way to make it work. I think in most cases I'm very willing to sit down and say, look, if this is our goal, how do we get there? What do we have to give up? What do you have to give up? How can we make, what I'm saying? I mean, I think there's not enough of that anymore, whether it's with everything, right? It's like you're entrenched in your perspective. I'll give you an interesting,
Okay.
I sat down with, who's lost his name now. Your partner in the Football Factory, Javier.
Latino.
Absolutely. And I'm sure we sat down one time and discussed immigration. And I said, you've got this perspective on it. I've got a different perspective on it because of my experiences. But I guarantee you and I can sit across the table. We could solve the issue. By giving and taking, right? By me starting to understand what your opinions, your experience, what the way you see things, you understanding the issues that I can bring up. There's no reason, and it's the same for me for soccer. It's the same for business. It's the same for anything, right? I think you can get people with different opinions as long as they're willing to talk and value the other person's opinion, and value them as human beings and say, where are you coming from that's different from where I'm coming from, and not be so entrenched in what we believe that we're not willing to look at another way.
Yeah.
And then also I think realize that, like we talked about with the league, we have very strong opinions. This is what we're going to do this year. This is correct. At the end of the year, we look at it and go, God, we're idiots. Why did we do it that way? Maybe we should have done this. Or play devil's advocate a little bit about, well, what if we did this? How would that make things work and talk things out? So, I think from that perspective, I think you can make just about anything happen. But
we need to have more of it, and I feel like you're right. We lack that in a society now where we live on social media, but our social media isn't really unfiltered. It's a biased algorithmic thing that's only going to show you things that you like. So when will you ever be challenged on any of the views that you have? So I wholeheartedly agree with you. We need more discourse. We need to be challenged more on our thoughts. But at the same time, it gets us nowhere if we're not open to listening.
Absolutely. And one of the great things about soccer, right, is we can have two completely different political views, come from different socioeconomic backgrounds, went to different high schools, whatever. And we can sit together and support the same team, right? And find common ground in that. Or, we can work together on other things. I mean, some of the people that I've coached with, and their people are so different than I am. We can get along. I mean, we can find a way to make things work. We can work together to achieve an outcome. And that happens in this league all the time. I mean, again, when you deal with 150 teams from every corner of the country, with every different kind of owner, and they're all having to work together as partners to make a league grow, right? There's a lot of that. There's a lot of working through those things. But, like I said, if everyone takes that same attitude of what is our common goal, what are we trying to accomplish, I think we can get there.
We can get there. To infinity and beyond. Like
Absolutely.
Buzz Lightyear says.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, Sean, I truly, truly appreciate this conversation. This one's going to go up there as one of my top conversations.
Well, I appreciate that. And again, I give a shout out to you and what you do. I encourage everyone to listen to it. There's, like I said, you get different perspectives on different things from different people. You can learn, right?
No pressure. I'm learning as I go, but I think I'm doing a decent job.
You do a fantastic job. I as I told you when we first started, I've listened to probably half of your podcasts and plan to listen to the rest of them when I get time.
Wow.
But no, I've always learned something. It's always very interesting, and the guests you have are interesting. And again, you can learn something from everyone, right?
That's the goal. Learn something every time, and if the listener today can take anything from this, I mean, that's the dream.
Absolutely.
So if I can leave anything with anyone that's listening, it's WPSL, Oklahoma City FC. The season starts in May, and we can get season tickets
on our website. We'll have our schedule out probably mid to late February, early March, and we'll have the U21 schedule out shortly thereafter. And then our season ticket passes for all games, and it's relatively. I think the season tickets are like $50 for a pass for two people or something. I mean, it's very reasonable.
That's a night out with your partner. That's
exactly, and that's for all the games. Or I think our ticket price is $10 a ticket. You can get them online, etc. But most kids, if they wear their club uniform, get in free, that kind of deal. So anyway, yeah, we'd love to see you out there this summer.
Oklahoma City FC, guys. Well, Sean, I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on. This has been another episode of the Mas Futbol Podcast.
Thank you very much.